The late afternoon sun cast golden beams across the glossy glass storefronts of Maple Ridge Plaza, one of the most upscale shopping areas in Atlanta. Shoppers strolled in and out of designer boutiques, sipping iced lattes and chatting beneath modern awnings. In a flowing emerald green dress and heels, Danielle Carter, a poised and confident black woman in her mid-30s, stepped into Maison Belle, a boutique known for its luxury home decor and pretentious staff. She had been eyeing a custom vase set for her new investment property and decided to stop in while finalizing nearby contracts. As the front bell chimed softly behind her, a hush fell over the store. From behind the counter, Alan Reese, the white middle-aged owner with slick back hair and an ever-present smirk, watched Danielle like a hawk. His eyes narrowed. She smiled politely. "Hi, just browsing, thank you." Alan didn't return the smile. Instead, he leaned over to whisper something to his assistant. The assistant's eyes flicked toward Danielle and then back down. Minutes passed. Danielle moved gracefully from shelf to shelf, taking photos of items she liked. As she reached for a price tag on a sculpted glass bowl, she felt the presence before hearing the voice. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Danielle turned, confused. "I'm sorry." Alan stepped forward. "We've had some theft recently, and we reserve the right to refuse service. This is a private business." A wave of disbelief washed over her. "You're accusing me of?" "I didn't say that," Alan interrupted, raising a hand, "but you've been acting suspiciously, and I've already called mall security." Danielle's jaw tightened. "Suspiciously? For taking photos of items for purchase?" "You don't need to raise your voice." She hadn't. Within moments, a uniformed mall security guard entered the store. He looked at Danielle, then Alan. "Is there a problem?" "She's making customers uncomfortable," Alan said, though there were no other customers in sight. Danielle held her ground. "I've done nothing wrong." "I understand," the guard said gently, embarrassed. "But I've been asked to escort you out." Danielle nodded slowly, fire in her eyes but calm in her movements. She turned without a word and walked out the same glass door she'd entered, her heels clicking on the marble. As she reached her black Tesla, she paused. Then she smiled. Not out of amusement, but out of decision. She tapped a contact on her phone. "Hey, Rob? It's Danielle. Is this seller for Maple Ridge Plaza still open to a full cash offer?" A pause. "He is? Good. Tell him I'm ready." She looked back at Maison Belle, where the owner now peered from the window, smug and unaware. "Let's buy the entire plaza." 2 days later, the Atlanta skyline shimmered through the windows of Carter and Wells Holdings, Danielle Carter's real estate firm headquartered in a sleek high-rise. The office buzzed with quiet efficiency, assistants clicking away at keyboards, deal closings flashing on screens, and Danielle, calm as ever, reviewing contracts with a pen in hand. Her assistant, Maria, stepped in. "Danielle, Rob from Turner Realty is on line 2. Danielle picked up the phone, already knowing what this was about. "Talk to me." "The seller accepted your terms," Rob said. "Full plaza, all 11 units, including the corner cafe and the boutique. They're even throwing in the underground parking rights." "Smart man," Danielle said with a small smile. "Closing date in 30 days. We'll need to review tenant leases, but most are month to month. You'll have complete control. You sure you want to go through with this one? That plaza's been a bit of a vanity project lately." Danielle stood, walking to the window, looking down at the very shopping center that had tried to humiliate her. "I don't buy property to feel better. I buy it to build better." "Understood," Rob replied. "Do you want us to notify the tenants now?" "No. Not yet," she said, sharp and deliberate. "Let them enjoy the quiet. The storm's coming soon enough." She hung up and turned to Maria. "Pull the leases for all the plaza tenants. I want to see who owns, who rents, and who's just pretending." Maria nodded, already tapping on her tablet. "And Maison Belle?" Danielle's eyes narrowed just slightly. "They lease. They'll get the same options as the others. But I'm rewriting the terms. Respect will be non-negotiable." As she returned to her desk, Danielle opened a leather-bound notebook labeled Legacy Projects. Inside were her goals, not just to build wealth, but to reshape spaces, offer opportunity, and shift power back into hands like hers. Buying the plaza wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. She wasn't interested in proving herself to anyone. She was claiming what should have never been denied. And soon, Maison Belle would be reminded of what real ownership looked like. 30 days later, the deal was done. The ink had barely dried when Danielle Carter received a thick folder confirming her ownership of the entire Maple Ridge shopping plaza. 11 retail units, 2 anchor tenants, the parking lot, and the maintenance rights, all under her name. She didn't celebrate. She didn't post about it. For Danielle, ownership wasn't about attention, it was about position. Quiet control. Long-term impact. She sat in her office that evening, city lights blinking beyond the windows, flipping through the tenant agreements. Most of the businesses had leases that were due for renewal within 6 months. A few were already behind on payments. And then there was Maison Belle, the boutique that had treated her like a threat instead of a customer. The irony didn't amuse her. It only clarified her strategy. She called Maria in. Draft an official letter to all tenants. Notify them of the ownership change. I want individual meetings scheduled with each within 2 weeks. No mass emails. No cold announcements. Personal connection. Maria nodded. In the boutique. Danielle didn't look up from the lease documents. Treat them like everyone else. But when we meet, bring the folder. 2 days later, the first wave of letters went out. Simple. Elegant. Firm. They informed each business that Carter & Wells Holdings was the new landlord of Maple Ridge Plaza and that updated lease terms would be discussed in person. At Maison Belle, Alan Reese held the envelope with confusion. The letterhead looked official. The wording was direct but respectful. He didn't recognize the company name, but something about it made him uneasy. Still, he shrugged it off, assuming the ownership change wouldn't affect him much. He had no idea that the woman he'd pushed out of his store weeks earlier was now the one who held the deed to the ground beneath his feet. Danielle, meanwhile, prepared not just for meetings, but for transformation. She wasn't just acquiring real estate, she was rewriting the script. This shopping plaza would no longer be a gate-kept space for the privileged few. It would reflect her vision, excellence, equity, and elegance. And for those who couldn't meet the new standard? They'd learn what it meant to mistake wealth for worth and ignorance for authority. The plaza was hers now. And this time, everyone would feel it. The morning sun cast a gentle glow across Maple Ridge Plaza as Danielle stepped out of her sleek black car, the same one she had driven away in weeks ago, but everything was different now. She wore a sharp white suit that spoke confidence without needing to say a word. Her heels clicked softly against the stone walkway as she moved with quiet precision toward the boutique. Behind her, Maria followed, holding a leather folder tucked under her arm, the kind of folder that didn't ask for respect but commanded it. Maison Belle looked the same, polished windows, curated displays, the same pretentious air it had always carried. But to Danielle, it now felt small. She didn't pause at the door. The bell chimed as she entered, just like before. Alan Reese stood behind the counter, tapping on his tablet. He looked up at the sound, his expression shifting slowly. Recognition dawned, then confusion, then a flicker of unease. "You?" he said, voice faltering. Danielle smiled politely. "Good morning, Mr. Reese." He straightened awkwardly, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone else to walk in behind her. "I'm here for our scheduled meeting," she continued, stepping forward. "Regarding the lease." "Our meeting?" Alan repeated. "Wait. You're with the new management." Maria calmly opened the folder and slid the papers across the counter. Carter & Wells Holdings now owns Maple Ridge Plaza, including this property. Effective last Friday. Alan stared at the documents. He blinked once. Then again. Danielle let the silence sit between them. "We'll be renegotiating all tenant leases," she said evenly. "You'll receive updated terms this week. You're welcome to stay, assuming you're aligned with the plaza's new direction." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat worked to form words that weren't there. Danielle tilted her head slightly. "Any questions?" He shook his head, slowly, like someone waking up in a nightmare they couldn't escape. Danielle turned, walked to the entrance, and stopped. She looked over her shoulder, her voice calm but razor sharp. "Next time, treat people with respect. You never know who's holding the keys." And with that, she stepped out into the sunlight, the rightful owner of every brick beneath his feet. By the end of the week, the story had already caught fire. It started with a quiet post on a local entrepreneur forum, a simple photo of a well-dressed black woman standing outside Maple Ridge Plaza, holding a folder, with the caption, "She owns the whole plaza now." Yes, the same one that had her escorted out. From there, it spread like wildfire. Within hours, local blogs picked it up. By the next day, it was trending on Twitter. Hashtag Plaza Boss. Hashtag She Owns It Now. Hashtag Danielle Carter. People were stunned, inspired, and, for some, uncomfortable. Thousands of comments poured in, praising Danielle's composure, her power move, and her refusal to let racial profiling define her. Danielle didn't post anything herself. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than any caption. Reporters called her office. Business podcasts begged for interviews. Local news stations sent camera crews to Maple Ridge, where they filmed wide shots of the elegant new signage being installed. Carter Square, formerly Maple Ridge Plaza. Inside Maison Belle, Alan Reese watched one of the segments from the small TV behind his counter. He looked pale. The news anchor smiled as she read. Danielle Carter, a well-known Atlanta investor, has transformed a moment of discrimination into a legacy of ownership. By purchasing the very plaza she was once kicked out of, she's proving that quiet power speaks the loudest. Alan turned the TV off. Meanwhile, Danielle was sitting in a quiet coffee shop she now owned, meeting with a young black couple who dreamed of opening a vegan bakery. She reviewed their proposal, asked smart questions, and smiled as she handed them the signed lease. "You are in," she said. "First month's rent waived. Let's build something that matters." When she walked out of the shop, someone waiting outside stopped her, a teenage girl with braids and wide eyes. "Miss Carter, are you really the one who bought the whole place?" Danielle paused, then smiled. "I am." The girl beamed. That's amazing." Danielle gently placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "One day, you'll own more." And with that, she moved on, not chasing headlines, but quietly creating a future where no one else would have to prove they belonged. Within 2 months, Maple Ridge Plaza was unrecognizable. Now renamed Carter Square, it pulsed with new life. The sterile, exclusive vibe was gone, replaced with a spirit of excellence, inclusion, and purpose. Danielle had overseen every detail, from the new modern signage to the updated courtyard design with outdoor seating and lush greenery. But it wasn't just about looks. It was about who filled the space. Gone were 2 underperforming tenants who had clung to outdated business models and cold customer service. In their place stood a black-owned art gallery showcasing local talent and a community bookstore that offered free tutoring programs for neighborhood kids on weekends. Danielle had chosen every new tenant with intention. She wasn't just curating retail, she was curating opportunity. She had quietly launched an initiative through her firm called Brick by Brick, which offered subsidized rent, mentorship, and business development support to minority and women entrepreneurs. Applications had flooded in, not just from Atlanta but from all over the state. And in the heart of the plaza, where polished stone planters once sat unused, Danielle commissioned a sculptor to create something permanent, a bronze piece titled The Turning Point, a figure standing tall, holding keys in one hand and blueprints in the other, eyes forward, not back. The day it was unveiled, crowds gathered. Local media, city council members, and business leaders stood side by side with families, students, and young professionals who had come just to see her. Danielle didn't stand on stage. She stood among them. She watched quietly as people took selfies in front of the statue, parents pointing it out to their kids. She heard whispers of, "That's her. That's Danielle Carter," followed by admiration, pride, and, most importantly, possibility. Inside Maison Belle, Alan Reese was still operating, now under a much stricter lease and with a very different tone toward his customers. His once icy demeanor had thawed significantly. He said hello now. He offered help. He watched the plaza change around him and knew there was no stopping it. Danielle never bothered to walk back into his store. She didn't need to. Her legacy wasn't about proving a point. It was about opening a door and leaving it open for others to walk through. Carter Square wasn't just a place to shop. It was a declaration. Ownership. Dignity. Vision. All built brick by brick, not in spite of the past, but because of it. The evening was warm, and Carter Square glowed under soft string lights draped across the plaza. A stage had been set near the center courtyard, framed by banners that read, "Honoring Community Leadership, Danielle Carter, Visionary of the Year." City officials, local business owners, artists, students, and families filled the space. Children ran between tables with cupcakes in hand, music floated through the air, and the crowd buzzed with anticipation. It was more than a celebration, it was a moment of shared pride. Danielle stood off to the side, watching everything quietly. She wore a deep navy suit and her signature calm smile. Her name had been trending for weeks, not because she had chased fame, but because she had created something no press release could fabricate: impact. When the mayor stepped onto the stage to speak, the crowd silenced. Carter Square used to be a place that kept people out, he began. Now, it's a place that welcomes people in. And that transformation, that vision, is thanks to Danielle Carter. The applause was thunderous. Danielle took the stage slowly, holding the plaque they'd given her. She didn't speak for long. "I didn't build this to be congratulated," she said into the microphone. "I built it because there was a gap between what people deserve and what they're given. I was once followed out of this plaza for no reason other than how I looked. I didn't come back to get even. I came back to plant something better." The crowd stood, clapping, cheering. A few people wiped away tears. Others held up phones, capturing history in real time. Later that night, after most guests had gone, Danielle walked alone through the plaza. Past the bookstore, now glowing with handwritten signs about upcoming poetry nights. Past the art gallery, where local teens were preparing a weekend exhibit. Past Maison Belle, where a young black manager was now helping an elderly customer pick out a centerpiece with a smile. Danielle reached the statue at the plaza's center and stood before it. The bronze figure, keys in one hand, blueprints in the other, reflected in her eyes. She didn't say anything. She just breathed in the quiet. It was full circle. She had turned pain into power. And this time, the plaza stood with her, not against her. Forever changed. Because she dared not just to reclaim space, but to redefine what it could be.